Cool. Thanks for all the panelists for being here today. Thanks to all the people attending. I'm sure it's late on a Tuesday, so last day of Interop Summit, so folks are interested to see some action, so we'll try to provide some entertainment with the folks up here. But yeah, quickly, why don't we just do a round table if you guys want to quickly introduce yourselves. 1 minute max, so please know how did I get into crypto. It's been X years since I get into crypto, but let's start with you, Mark.
Hey everyone, I'm Mark Toda. I'm a protocol engineer at Uniswap Labs. I'll keep it short. That's it.
Hi everyone, my name is Danny Sui. I'm a lead data scientist at 0x Labs, and I want to add one extra. So we're technically a DEX aggregator, slightly different from everyone as a DEX. Yeah.
Hey guys, my name is Sunny. I'm one of the co-founders of Osmosis, and have been building in Cosmos for about 5 or 6 years now.
Hey everyone, I'm Steven. I'm head of strategy at the Pangolin DEX team, and I help lead a lot of partnerships and product. Cool.
And then just quickly, so you guys know who I am, I'm Jim. I am the moderator for this panel, and I'm working on a cross-chain project called Catalyst. Cool. So let's address kind of the elephant in the room. If cross-chain works, one DEX from all, right? Curious if you guys have any thoughts on if that's the case, and if not, kind of what the future looks like. Maybe I'll start with you, Sunny.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if one DEX will rule them all, but I think no matter what, in any system, there's always power laws. And so I think that, yeah, I mean, a few DEXs will control the lion's share of volume, and then there'll be like, power laws, and like some DEXs will, I think, achieve like more like application-specific niches, right? Like I don't think one DEX architecture necessarily works for every possible use cases. Even in the real world, you have so many different types of market structures. The types of market structures, even in like TradFi you use for commodities versus bond trading versus securities trading, like people think like, oh, CLOBs are what's used everywhere. Like no, that's not actually how like most bond trading works, for example, right? And so I think you'll have different DEXs with different market structures for different niches.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. Steven, curious to get your thoughts on that at Pangolin. Kind of, do you agree with that kind of vision of the future? And if so, how does kind of Pangolin fit into that?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with what Sunny said. High level, I think there's building products and operating them, right? So we're all proponents of DAOs here, and I think we're actually the stewards or like part of the community really bringing these protocols forward together. Competition's good. I think that there's always going to be high volume flows through certain DEXs, and it's always going to sort of be a cool competition.
Totally. Mark, what are your thoughts, or your employer's thoughts on kind of the future state of DEXs?
Yeah, I think I generally agree with what everyone here is saying. I think the different chains have different sort of qualities that may sort of tend towards different designs over other designs, as well as like different asset classes and so on might require different AMM designs. I think especially as we move towards like a more scalable universe, there's a lot more like interesting sort of design space for DEXs. And so I don't know, I definitely see this sort of like multi-DEX system. Although power laws and brand power and ease of use when there's sort of one-stop shop as well is definitely a powerful thing. But I don't know, I think there's a chance for a mixture as well in the future.
Yeah, and Danny, I know your kind of project is thinking about this in a different way. Curious to get your thoughts on the future and where kind of 0x plays into that.
Yeah, actually, I think we have an interesting perspective as a DEX aggregator because we actually like basically check on each DEX and see how their pricing look at like for different token pairs. And so as like Mark said, like different design actually have advantage across different token pairs. Like for example, like Curve, they will be much more dominant in stablecoin pair, and like actually Uniswap released the whole potential of like all the long tail pairs, and like also like Clipper recently they become like a very good liquidity for like small trades, and I think in the future it's definitely gonna be all kinds of DEX that's how to say have a dominance in their area, and also I think not only also the mechanism design, but also the product design also cater to different user base. For example, like we see like a lot of like Asia DEX, they have like really strong liquidity on USDT because user preference. So
interesting. And I guess like for the builders in the space that are focused on like specific DEX implementations, Is that something that you guys feel comfortable with? Like, you're carving out your own niche, and other projects have their own niche, or maybe is there a deviation in kind of that thinking?
For me, question.
Or it's for anyone. Yeah, really.
I think like from our perspective, it's like what we do is basically just aggregate the best pricing for users. So like no preference, just fairing comparison, and just trying to get the best liquidity. But curious, other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we are definitely moving much more towards an order book style system on chain. I think one of the nice benefits of having your own app chain is you have a lot more scalability to be able to like do fully on-chain order books and like implement cool things like batching and parallelism and all sorts of things that you can't necessarily do on an EVM today. And so yeah, I think that like this new, so we're building something called loot books, we're calling them. It's like kind of like a cross between Uniswap v3 style contrary liquidity with limit orders as well. So it stands for limit orders on tick boundaries, hence loot books.
Cool. Yeah, that's really fascinating. I know you guys are thinking a lot about what a CLOB style would look like. And I know there's other kind of new mechanisms like duality, also thinking about recreating the benefits of a CLOB in kind of an AMM structure. When I kind of think about DEXs, right, I mean, I personally know there's a lot to be innovated on, but I think a lot of folks in the space think, AMMs, like, they're all the same. They all kind of have the same mechanisms. But I know you guys are working really hard in kind of advancing the innovations in that space. Mark, curious to get your thoughts on how your project and your company is thinking about what the advancements look like.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the design space for AMMs is huge. They're definitely not all the same, and I think it's there's a ton of really interesting innovation happening there, and especially in some of the, kind of like I was saying before, in some of the more niche token pairs or like on different chains, there's like even more design space than just sort of what you generally think of on mainnet with a sort of average like high volume pairs and so on. So I think, yeah, I don't know. It's great to see tons of innovation all across the space.
Yeah, and in regards to that innovation, could you give us maybe a line of sight into what you guys are thinking about in innovation?
I don't know if I can if I can give too much information there, but we're definitely working on some stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so capital efficiency or cross-chain, I imagine, is kind of in the books.
I'd say so.
Okay, cool. And then Stephen, what about your project?
Yeah, I think one of the really unique contributions that we're trying to lead in the space is with one of our solution sets called Honeycomb. It's really a like front-end SDK. What that really means is that builders can kind of add swaps, pool, and farm to their site with kind of like one copy-paste by leveraging kind of like, it started as this expedition in decentralizing our front end and just kind of making it easier for people to show their pools, not just on Pangolin, but also natively in their own dApps. So we're kind of doing some really cool work just to help with distribution of these products.
Cool. Yeah, and I think there's a pretty broad design space that everyone's kind of looking into as it pertains to the future of AMMs and DEXs in the space. One of the things that I haven't heard from you guys is, and I think the nature of this conversation and this conference is actually cross-chain. And I know that that's something that a lot of projects are thinking about expanding into. Curious if open question for anyone who wants to take it, what your cross-chain vision looks like for your project.
Yeah, so for us, I mean, cross-chain is not something that like we are evolving into. We had to deal with that from day one because being an app chain, there was one token on our chain, technically two, but there's one token on our chain and there's not much you can trade with only one token on a chain. So we had to start with like cross-chain from the get-go, right? And so, by being a Cosmos SDK based chain, we were able to automatically plug into the IBC stack and like connect to the today 50 plus blockchains that are running IBC. And then by integrating with things like Axelar, we're now able to plug into many more EVM chains as well. And so, our goal has always been like, rather than being the DEX for one ecosystem, we want to just be the DEX where cross-ecosystem trading happens. And if you look at centralized exchanges, that's actually where most of the volume happens, right? Like, and today, if you want to trade AVAX for, Phantom, right? Really, the easiest way to do that is a centralized exchange. So that's like not okay, right? And so we're trying to be the DEX for cross-ecosystem trading.
That's a really cool comment. I think like the the way we're also thinking about that is really similar. Basically, we want to recreate the experience of a centralized exchange, like what Sunny's saying, and like give that to anyone so we can have it, as like, Pangolin's front end, and you can also kind of quickly add those kind of components to your DApp as well. The like one of the things we've been doing lately is kind of like aggregating aggregators for creating this experience we call bridge swap. It's one of the components in Honeycomb, which is this like kind of collection of widgets you can add to your site, right? It's basically like we're the biggest user of Honeycomb, and the idea is like bridge swap just kind of aggregates all these different routes, like something like 0x or like Squid and Li-Fi, like different solutions there. And, like we're just collecting them all together so you can find the best route, and I think that's like kind of a cool play for us to push out.
Yeah, I think we're definitely bullish on cross-chain future. But I think one thing you need to believe before cross-chain is multi-chain theory, and I think our team is definitely aligned on that. We're on 8 chains right now. But then the next step is like how you want to cross. And there are a lot of options. Like for example, you can maybe use hop protocol, which also potentially also involve bridging, but also swap together. And there are some solutions like Hashflow. They basically have like a assets staked in another place. But it sounds to me maybe not the most capital efficient way. There are also some theory people say actually the best UX of cross-chain right now is actually centralized exchange. So I think our team is like evaluating the risks there, all the bridge hacks right now, and just see how it matures right now.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with a lot of what Danning just said there. Like I think Uniswap is definitely embracing the multi-chain future right now. We're on many different chains, and evaluating the different chains through the governance process is definitely something that we are doing and will continue to do. But I think the big problem, I guess, sort of blocking this sort of like cross-chain interoperability is just like the bespoke nature of each of these different chains and each of these different bridge implementations, which makes it really hard to create kind of a unified experience and a unified developer kit that allows for building that kind of stuff. And I think that's an interesting area of advancement that we can do to sort of like unify the process, maybe even like an ERC for like standardizing bridge interfaces or something like that. I don't know. That would make it a little bit easier to create some kind of maybe application layer thing that just automatically works cross-chain, which definitely doesn't exist right now with kind of the bespoke nature of the systems.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to kind of echo that, every kind of interoperability protocol is using different specifications, whether on the interface level or the routers level. And so definitely, I think there's a task group that I saw being formed on Twitter, and I'm kind of lurking in their Telegram group that's thinking about an EIP to kind of solve that and alleviate kind of the struggles of that. And I know that Axelar is also building their own Turing-complete execution layer in order to enable that as well. And so, I think it's interesting because there's 4 folks up here working on kind of DEXs in the Interop space, but 4 very different implementations, right? We have Pangolin that's building Honeycomb, that's kind of aggregating the aggregators. We have Osmosis that's kind of its own sovereign chain and it's connecting to others using Axelar and other kind of outpost mechanisms that I've kind of read Osmosis doing. Sunny, Danning, you guys are a DEX aggregator first and foremost, but still kind of multi-chain, and then Uniswap, of course, is still bullish, multi-chain, still wait and see it on the cross-chain. Curious why you guys are picking those kind of solutions for each of your solutions, and why is it so challenging to kind of align on one global vision of what a cross-chain DEX could be? Maybe Mark, you want to start first?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I think kind of the ethos at Uniswap is to be sort of maximally agnostic and like any decisions we make want to be like future-proof and sort of I guess a little bit conservative in general. And so I don't know. I think this sort of I wouldn't say wait and see approach, but more so build the best things we can in the places that we know they work, and then in terms of interoperability and stuff, sort of like wait and like basically at this point it doesn't feel as though it's totally ready yet. Kind of waiting and seeing. I think that sort of aligns with that general ethos of Uniswap Labs and so on.
Yeah, I think similar for us as a navigator, like there has to be liquidity, like big enough liquidity before we get on to the chain. So our general approach whenever we look at a new chain is like we want to size the opportunity of the liquidity total locked value there, and also how big the user demand actual there is. And from what we see right now, it's like probably some major L1 like Polygon and BSC are actually having some, like, I guess, retail user demand, but some other chains are still, I guess, not big enough for us to invest like the whole team and engineering effort to really like, you know.
Yeah, for us, I mean, our take has always been like we should have one place where our DEX experience lays, and like instead of fragmenting our liquidity, fragmenting our user experience, like I know like SushiSwap had like, you know, it's on like a bunch of different chains, but it's like, you know, it's not a cohesive experience across all of them. You have to like, you have assets on one chain, and so you go to a different interface that you don't see it there. Our goal is like, okay, let's provide one good experience that encompasses everything, especially if you want to expand beyond just EVM chains, right? Which is what we intend to do. Like we already support Cosmos SDK chains and EVM chains. We'll be doing more soon. But it's like instead of having to re-implement our DEX in a bunch of different places, we implement it on like the stack that is, in our opinion, the best to build DEXs on, and then just import assets from everywhere else into one place where we can build all the cool advanced functionality that we want.
That's really interesting. So we've kind of taken an approach where we're trying to help a lot of different chains grow their liquidity, and we've kind of done something very different than most DEXs. What we'll actually do when we show up to new ecosystems is we have a new token specifically for that ecosystem, rather than kind of like going in and sort of like being like Vikings or whatever. What we're really doing is like kind of deploying the DEX with a new local franchise of Pangolin almost. In the future, that could be like a sub-DAO kind of program where we're maybe helping with different parts of it, but we can progressively decentralize it. And then something we've done that I think is actually kind of cool, it's a little bit of an experiment, but some new contracts we were developing. It's called Sunshine and Rainbows, and basically it's a little bit of a solve for the like loyalty of liquidity problem, where we're basically trying to, we basically divert or optimize rewards towards loyal LPs by factoring in the time that you've been in the pool. And you know, kind of like if you're like a constructive long-term liquidity provider, you're going to get the lion's share of the rewards.
One thing that another part of our like interchain approach is, like Jim mentioned, our outpost system. So this is sort of how we solve the, you know, meet users where they are problem, where like, you know, let's say users don't have assets on Osmosis chain already. They have assets on another chain, let's say something like Juno or Say or something, right? Well, we can basically make it so we have a contract on Say that will, you know, you just execute a swap there, and what it does is it automatically, like, you know, normally you'd have to do like 5 different transactions. You'd have to set, let's say you want to swap Atom to USDC. You'd have to first send the Atom to the Cosmos Hub, then to Osmosis, swap it, send it to Axelar, then send it back to Say, right? And we can encode that entire process in a single like IBC metadata transaction, and then it just executes it. And to the user, it feels like they're executing against a native DEX on the chain, but it's executing against the much deeper liquidity that exists on Osmosis. So this is how we like provide the multi-chain experience, but by using a single aggregated source of liquidity.
That's a lot of taxable events saved.
No, it's only a single taxable event.
Okay.
Which is the swap itself. Like, I think, not a tax lawyer, but I don't think IBCing should be a taxable event.
Yeah, it's just minimized, but yeah. I mean, maybe if it's connected to like a really low TVL chain, that can be kind of exploited. But yeah, it's trust minimized in the sense you're inheriting security from 2 interacting chains. Cool. I know we have a minute left. Sadly, didn't have time for questions from the audience, so that's my fault. I apologize as a moderator. But maybe if we go on the list, just share one thing that you guys are really excited about in the space right now. Could be about cross-chain, could be about DEXs, could be anything. And then we can leave it with the rest of the audience.
OP superchain.
Meta transaction and MEV.
Privacy and like MEV mitigation strategies, anti-front running stuff.
Yeah, a lot of the things they said, I agree with that.
And probably just add for me, I would say rollups as a service and servicing the modular interoperability thesis in a world of a million app-specific rollups and app chains. Cool. Thank you guys so much for your time. Appreciate it.